It started as a peaceful morning for Clara Bennett, a solo travel blogger with an eye for the extraordinary. The kind of morning she loved: sunlight breaking through the misty hills, a crisp breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers, and a winding road that promised new stories waiting to be discovered. Her camera dangled comfortably around her neck, its familiar weight a constant companion on her journeys. For Clara, photography wasn't just a hobby, it was her passion and her livelihood. She had spent years mastering her craft, learning to see the world in ways most people overlooked. Where others saw an empty road, Clara saw the golden hues of early light bouncing off the asphalt, the story of countless travelers etched into its worn surface. Her photos weren't just pictures, they were emotions frozen in time, stories whispered through the lens. But Clara wasn't just talented, she was fearless. Traveling solo wasn't always easy, especially for a woman. She'd faced her share of challenges: broken down buses in remote villages, unexpected storms in unfamiliar landscapes, and the occasional unwelcome attention. But Clara had learned to adapt. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, her determination to chase beauty and adventure far outweighing any fear. This morning, as she adjusted her camera settings to capture the perfect shot of a shimmering lake framed by towering pine trees, she had no idea her resolve would be tested once again. The serene silence was suddenly interrupted by a distant rumble. At first, it was faint, almost like a low growl echoing through the valley. But the sound grew louder, more insistent. Clara turned her head toward the winding road behind her, squinting against the glare of the rising sun. The roar of motorcycle engines shattered the calm. One by one, the bikers came into view, their machines glinting like beasts under the sunlight. There were 5 of them, their dark leather jackets and bold tattoos making a statement even from a distance. Clara's heart skipped a beat, but she steadied herself. She'd encountered groups like this before: loud, confident, and often harmless. Most of the time, they passed by with little more than a glance. This time, though, something felt different. As the bikers approached, Clara moved to the side of the road, giving them plenty of space to pass. But instead of speeding by, they slowed down, their engines growling like restless animals. The leader, a burly man with a thick beard and mirrored sunglasses, raised a hand, signaling the others to stop. The group pulled over, their motorcycles forming a semicircle around Clara. The leader removed his helmet, shaking out his hair as he fixed her with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Well, what do we have here?" he said, his voice carrying a mix of amusement and condescension. "A little photographer all by herself." Clara forced a polite smile, her fingers tightening around her camera. "Just passing through," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. Another biker, younger and wirier, laughed. "Passing through, huh? With all that fancy gear? Looks like someone's got expensive tastes." The others chuckled, their laughter echoing in the stillness of the valley. Clara's instincts kicked in. She didn't want to escalate the situation, but she also didn't want to show fear. "I'm just here to capture the scenery," she said, gesturing toward the breathtaking view behind her. "It's a beautiful spot, isn't it?" The leader took a step closer, ignoring her attempt to redirect the conversation. "You sure you're not here to snap pictures of us? Maybe sell 'em to some tabloid," he said, his tone teasing but with an edge that made Clara's pulse quicken. "Of course not," Clara replied, her voice firm but measured. "I'm a travel blogger. Nature is my focus." The younger biker snorted. "Nature, huh? Well, you've got some real wild animals right in front of you. Maybe we should give you something exciting to photograph." The group laughed again, louder this time. The sound grated against Clara's nerves, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she shifted her stance, subtly angling her camera downward. She wasn't looking for a confrontation, but if things took a turn, her instincts told her to be prepared. The leader seemed to notice her movements. He tilted his head, his smirk deepening. "Relax, lady. We're just having some fun. No need to get all tense." Clara met his gaze, her calm demeanor unwavering. "I appreciate that," she said, her tone neutral. "I'll just pack up and be on my way." But as she turned to secure her gear, one of the bikers revved his engine, kicking up a cloud of dust that swirled around her. The group burst into laughter again, their amusement at her expense painfully obvious. Clara clenched her jaw but kept her composure. She knew better than to engage. She'd learned long ago that situations like this often escalated when met with anger or fear. Instead, she focused on the task at hand, securing her camera and preparing to leave. But even as she worked, her mind raced. She wasn't just thinking about how to get out of the situation, she was observing, taking mental notes. The leader's smug expression, the tattoos on the younger biker's arm, the way their motorcycles were positioned to block her exit. These men thought they had her cornered. They saw a lone woman with a camera, someone they could intimidate for a laugh. What they didn't see was the quiet strength behind her calm exterior, the resilience born from years of solo travel and countless encounters with people who underestimated her. What they didn't see was the camera in her hands, a tool far more powerful than they realized. Clara finished packing her gear, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. She glanced at the bikers one last time, her expression unreadable. "Thanks for the company," she said lightly, her tone betraying none of the tension in the air. "Enjoy the rest of your ride." With that, she began walking toward the road, her steps steady and deliberate. The bikers exchanged glances, their laughter subsiding as they watched her go. They didn't follow, content to let her leave. Or so they thought. Clara kept walking, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. She had no intention of letting this moment pass without consequence. She had faced bigger challenges before, and she knew how to turn adversity into an advantage. As the group's laughter faded into the distance, Clara tightened her grip on her camera. What they didn't know was that every insult, every smug smirk, had been immortalized in her lens. What they didn't know was that Clara Bennett wasn't just a travel blogger. She was a storyteller. And this story was far from over. It started as a peaceful morning for Clara Bennett, a solo travel blogger with a gift for turning ordinary scenes into extraordinary stories. The sky above her was a soft gradient of pinks and oranges, the kind of light that photographers dream of capturing. Clara stood at the edge of a serene mountain pass, her camera poised to immortalize the beauty of the moment. For Clara, this was more than just a job, it was her calling. Photography was her way of making sense of the world, of showing people the magic that existed in the everyday. Her photos had won awards, graced magazine covers, and inspired thousands to explore the beauty of nature. Yet, as accomplished as she was, Clara remained unassuming. She preferred to let her work speak for itself. This morning was no different. She'd risen early, following her instinct to chase the sunrise, and had found herself on this quiet stretch of road. The air was crisp, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the distant call of birds. As she framed a shot of the rising sun reflecting off a nearby lake, she felt a deep sense of peace. But peace is often fleeting, and Clara's morning was about to take an unexpected turn. The first sign of trouble came as a faint rumble, barely audible over the soft sounds of nature. Clara didn't pay it much mind at first, her focus entirely on the scene before her. But the rumble grew louder, more insistent, until it became impossible to ignore. She lowered her camera, turning toward the source of the noise. What she saw made her heart sink just a little. A group of bikers emerged from around the bend, their motorcycles roaring like wild beasts. There were 5 of them, dressed in leather jackets adorned with patches and insignias that hinted at a shared camaraderie and possibly trouble. Clara had encountered bikers on her travels before, and most were friendly enough. But something about this group felt different. They rode with an air of dominance, their loud engines and synchronized movements demanding attention. As they approached, Clara instinctively stepped off the road, giving them space to pass. She hoped they would continue on their way, leaving her to enjoy the tranquility of her morning. But instead of speeding past, the bikers slowed down, their formation tightening as they came to a stop near her. "Hey there, camera girl," one of them called out, his voice carrying a mocking edge. Clara turned to face them, keeping her expression neutral. "Good morning," she said simply, her voice calm but firm. The leader of the group, a tall man with a thick beard and mirrored sunglasses, dismounted his bike and sauntered toward her. "Morning. It's a little too peaceful out here, don't you think?" he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Clara resisted the urge to roll her eyes. "I guess that depends on your perspective," she replied, her voice steady. The man chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "You out here all alone, sweetheart? Or is there a boyfriend hiding in the bushes somewhere?" The other bikers laughed at his comment, their voices echoing off the mountainside. Clara's grip on her camera tightened, but she refused to let her discomfort show. She had faced situations like this before, and she knew the importance of staying calm. "I'm just here to take pictures," she said, lifting her camera slightly as if to prove her point. "The scenery is incredible." Another biker, younger and wiry with a cocky grin, leaned on his handlebars. "Oh, she's one of those artsy types," he said, his tone mocking. "What do you do, lady? Post this stuff on Instagram and call yourself an influencer?" The group burst into laughter again, their jeers cutting through the once peaceful morning. Clara felt a flush of irritation rise in her chest, but she kept her expression composed. She knew better than to engage with their taunts. The leader took another step closer, his shadow falling over her. "You know, it's dangerous out here all by yourself," he said, his tone soft but menacing. "A lot could happen." Clara met his gaze, her own unwavering. "I'm aware," she said coolly. "That's why I'm careful." Her calm response seemed to catch him off guard, and for a moment, he hesitated. But then his smirk returned, and he motioned to one of the other bikers. "Let's see what she's got in that fancy bag," he said. Clara's pulse quickened, but she didn't move. "That won't be necessary," she said, her voice firm. The younger biker stepped forward, his grin widening. "Relax, lady. We're just curious." As he reached for her bag, Clara instinctively stepped back, raising her camera as if to take a picture. The movement was subtle, but it was enough to make him pause. "What are you gonna do?" he sneered. "Take my picture." Clara tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I'll call the cops." "Your choice." The group fell silent for a moment, the tension thick in the air. The leader studied her, his smirk fading as he considered her words. Finally, he raised a hand, signaling the younger biker to back off. all right," he said, his tone casual but with an edge of irritation. "We're just messing with you. No need to get all serious." Clara lowered her camera but didn't let her guard down. "Good to know," she said, her voice steady. The leader chuckled again, shaking his head. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he said. "But you should be careful out here. Not everyone's as friendly as we are." With that, he turned and mounted his bike, motioning for the others to follow. The group roared off down the road, their engines drowning out the silence once more. As the dust settled and the sound of their motorcycles faded into the distance, Clara exhaled a shaky breath. Her heart was still racing, but she felt a sense of relief knowing the encounter was over. Or so she thought. Clara turned her attention back to her camera, checking the settings and reviewing the photos she had taken earlier. But as she did, an idea began to form in her mind. She wasn't just a photographer, she was a storyteller. And this story was far from over. Her hands moved quickly as she adjusted her camera, snapping a few shots of the road where the bikers had been. She wasn't sure yet what she would do with the images, but she knew one thing for certain: those men had underestimated her. What they didn't realize was that Clara Bennett wasn't just any traveler. She was someone who knew how to turn adversity into art, and she wasn't about to let their behavior go unnoticed. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, Clara packed up her gear and set off down the road, her determination stronger than ever. This wasn't the first time she had faced a challenge, and it wouldn't be the last. But if there was one thing Clara knew, it was this: she had the power to turn the tables, one frame at a time. Clara crouched low, adjusting her camera's angle to capture the shimmering reflection of the morning sun on the lake's surface. The stillness around her was calming, with only the occasional rustling of leaves in the breeze. Nature's beauty always had a way of reminding her why she traveled alone. It gave her moments like this, uninterrupted, unfiltered, and pure. But the serenity shattered with the deep rumble of motorcycle engines in the distance. Clara froze for a moment, her fingers hovering over her camera. The sound was growing louder, a low roar that echoed through the valley like a warning. She turned her head toward the road, squinting against the sunlight as the group came into view. 5 bikers sped down the winding road, their black jackets and chrome bikes gleaming in the morning light. Clara could see the patches on their jackets, the bold insignias and skull designs that screamed trouble. Her heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to focus, keeping her breathing steady. At first, she thought they would pass her by, their roaring engines a temporary disruption to her peaceful morning. But as they drew closer, it became clear they weren't just passing through. The leader of the group raised his arm, signaling for the others to follow as they veered off the road and onto the dirt path leading to her spot. The bikers encircled her, their engines growling like wild beasts. Clara stood up slowly, brushing off her jeans as she glanced around. She wasn't cornered, not physically at least, but the way they moved, calculated, predatory, sent a chill down her spine. "Look what we've got here," the leader drawled, his voice loud enough to carry over the noise of their bikes. He was a burly man with a thick beard and piercing eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. A little photographer out in the middle of nowhere. Another biker, younger and wirier with a mischievous grin, chimed in. "All alone, too. What are you shooting, lady? The trees? Or are you waiting for something interesting?" Clara kept her expression neutral, her grip tightening on her camera. "Just the scenery," she replied calmly. Her voice was steady, but inside, her mind was racing. The group laughed, a deep, guttural sound that echoed in the open space. One of them, a stocky man with a shaved head, revved his engine and leaned forward. "Hope your camera's waterproof," he shouted before spinning his back tire in the mud, sending a spray of muck in her direction. Clara stepped back quickly, shielding her camera with her body. The splatter landed on her boots and the hem of her jeans, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she straightened up, brushing off the mud with slow, deliberate movements. "Nice one, Randy," another biker hooted, slapping the stocky man on the back. Bet she didn't see that coming. Clara looked at the man who had splashed her, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. She wasn't afraid, not entirely. Unease, yes, but fear? That was a choice, and she wasn't giving them the satisfaction. The leader dismounted his bike, walking toward her with a swagger that spoke of arrogance. "Relax, sweetheart," he said, spreading his hands as if in mock innocence. "We're just having a little fun. No harm, right?" Clara met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "As long as the fun doesn't involve damaging my gear," she said evenly. The leader chuckled, shaking his head. "Tough one, huh? I like that." He turned to his crew. "What do you think, boys? Think she could handle riding with us for a day? The younger biker grinned. Not sure she could keep up. The group erupted into laughter again, their voices grating against Clara's nerves. She stayed quiet, her fingers tightening around her camera strap. She knew better than to engage. This wasn't her first encounter with people who underestimated her, who thought they could intimidate her because she was alone. Come on, the leader said, turning back to her. Let me see that fancy camera of yours. Bet it's worth more than my bike. Clara shifted slightly, her body turning to shield her camera. Sorry, she said, her voice cool. I don't let anyone touch my equipment. The leader's smirk faltered for a moment, and an uncomfortable silence settled over the group. Clara could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy like a storm about to break. One of the bikers revved his engine again, breaking the silence. Careful, lady, he said, his tone mocking. Wouldn't want to upset us. Clara forced herself to relax her grip, though every instinct screamed at her to be ready for anything. I appreciate the advice, she said, her tone light but firm. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to get back to work. The leader's smirk returned, though it didn't reach his eyes. He stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to gauge how far he could push her. Finally, he stepped back, raising his hands in a mock gesture of surrender. All right, he said. We'll leave the lady to her pictures. Come on, boys. The group hesitated for a moment before following his lead, their engines roaring to life as they turned back toward the road. The younger biker shot Clara a parting glance, his grin still cocky. Don't stay out here too long, he called. You never know who you might run into. As they rode off, the dust they kicked up lingered in the air.